The Minnesota Vikings are back in the win column against the Indianapolis Colts with a great game that we've seen a big bounce back after two back-to-back losses. They find themselves in the middle of trade talks as well, even after a big bounce back win, to make sure that this does not happen again this season. We're going to be talking about the game a little bit and also talking about how a trade that we will discuss later and get into and kind of reveal the details later will affect the Vikings for the rest of this season and years to come. Now, before we get into all of this news, be sure to hit the sub button if you haven't already. We know that 91% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot to get all of your Minnesota Vikings news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button, join us here on the channel. We're covering everything Minnesota Vikings, and we wish you could stick around to join us. But without any further ado, Griffen, we need to talk about the game because we're back on the win column. It felt good to see this win. The nerves were there. The nerves were there even though we were going in against the Indianapolis Colts and Joe Flacco, not Anthony Richardson, just because of what we see in the past few weeks. But we're back. We seem to be back. There's still a few things that we need to clean up, but this was a much better game overall compared to what we had seen against the Rams. And we avoided a face mask call in this one, but arguably there could have been another call for a hit to the head on Sam Darnold. But I want to take a look at the offense here before we get into it. As we see, the defense really did their work with Joe Flacco, and I understand the Colts, not the best team, not the best system right now, but we helped out Joe Flacco a lot here by getting to him, not having to throw the ball so he can go to bed, go to sleep when we've seen him asleep on the bench. But our offense was also firing out there. Sam Darnold, two kind of ugly turnovers, I guess we'll say. But apart from that, what a game from the whole team here that we had seen. Cam Akers really shocked me at a few plays that he had in this game. But overall, I'm very, very happy with how the Vikings came out this game. So, Griffen, how do you feel about this game so far? Kind of looking at it briefly here now.
It did feel really good to get back in the win column. It was a long, anxious Sunday for Vikings fans because we had the late game. And this is a game that it could have been a trap game for Minnesota easily. Even going into the game, I looked at my girlfriend and I said, I feel like we're going to lose this game just because it was prime time. It was at home. So primetime games at home typically don't go well for us unless they're in the playoffs like the Minneapolis Miracle was. But they were able to get it down. They had us in the first half, not going to lie, but we were able to pull it together and get things rolling in the second half. The offense got moving. Cam Robinson played great in his first game in Minnesota. And Cam Akers, like you said, I think was one of the biggest offensive surprises where he was able to create gaps that Aaron Jones wasn't able to do. He was very explosive in the little time that he had. And he had a really solid stat line overall, I thought. And as well, just sharing the ball around. Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt, Hawkinson's first game back, and they didn't force feed him. The Colts probably thought they were going to force feed Hawkinson and try and get him a touchdown or try and get him in the end zone. They did pick him off in the end zone when he was targeting Hawkinson. But after that happened, it's like Sam Darnold switched up and said, all right, you want to try and take Hawk away? All right, I'll go for Johnny. I'll go for Josh. And then Josh Oliver comes away with the touchdown. So this was a game where we didn't need our stars to step up. Jefferson, yeah, he had over 100 yards, but it was Addison who got the touchdown. Johnny Munt had a solid game, but it was Josh Oliver who got the touchdown. Same with Hawkinson. He had a solid game in his first game back, so can't wait to see what more of this offense does with him. Aaron Jones was able to get a lot more things going as well. The defense did their job. They didn't have to do too much, but after that first half, they really hunkered down and made sure that the Colts couldn't get anything rolling.
Yeah, we've really seen the offensive at full force here now that everybody is healthy. Everybody is back running. We've seen Jordan Addison get more involved in this game. We saw everybody really seem to have at least a touch on the ball or a few. And looking at the Vikings receiving, you can see so many different names here. Whether it is one reception, two receptions, so many opportunities where we had seen people touching the ball. And I think this is going to be a big lethal, I'm not sure if that's a word, but a big lethal part of the Vikings offense going forward for the rest of the season is simply how many weapons they have. We know that Jalen Nailor, when Jordan Addison was out, was elite. TJ Hawkinson back now, one of the best, if not the best tight end in the league. Johnny Munt getting involved before that, now still getting involved. Josh Oliver, the blocking tight end, getting involved as well. And, well, of course, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, those guys, they're not going to be not involved, but the sheer amount of people that can actually get involved in the passing game is going to be such a big thing for Sam Darnold, for the Vikings going forward, especially against some of these tough competitions that the Vikings are going to have near the end of the season and in crunch time when we do get down towards the playoffs and we need to win a few games. That's when a lot of these guys are going to come in handy. But as you mentioned as well, the defense in this game was absolutely fantastic. There were a few opportunities where, we've seen the past few games, they were a bit pressured, a bit of too much stuff for the secondary, but this game felt good. We've seen it here. We've seen it at its best, but There are opportunities now, like I said, the last few games where we could use another cornerback, and that's what we're going to transition into here now. There's a sneaky Vikings trade target that has been revealed earlier today in an Athletic article by Alec Lewis, which a lot of Vikings fans are going to be pumped about, and that is Jaycee Horn. For more than a decade, Minnesota has struggled with the cornerbacks in the draft, so why not try and land a young and controllable corner via trade? Would come at a steep cost, but if the Vikings aren't going to find 24-year-old like him in free agency, not only is he a former first-round pick with pedigree, but he has played at South Carolina, and how beneficial would it be have him learning alongside former Gamecock Stephon Gilmore? And we know Stephon Gilmore, not the guy he once was still good, still has that the mindset in his game, but the fact that he can teach a former Gamecock in Jaycee Horn, an elite cornerback already, and the Vikings would not have to really worry about what they're trading, as it seems like Kwesi is trying to move the first round pick that they have, but really haven't found a suitable partner yet. And with time winding down towards the trade deadline, I think Jaycee Horn would be an absolutely amazing option for this Vikings team, and a secondary that seems to have been struggling in some very, very good teams and with the deep ball. So, Griffen, what do you think about Jaycee Horn? I think that a lot of people will be excited, and he's one of the guys that, gets me going if we got him on the Vikings.
Yeah, it would be great to see him on Minnesota. I think he's a really good young talent. Carolina brought him in. They drafted him for a reason, obviously. I do like the idea of him learning behind Stephon Gilmore because he will be a free agent at the end of the season. We're going to touch on that in a second. But I think as well as this secondary has struggled, like you said, we're far ways away from Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes when those guys were a solid duo, especially Xavier Rhodes for all the pass interference penalties he got. But again, we're still a long ways away from that. We still have these younger DBs that we need to get going. We tried out the Cameron Dantzler project. That didn't work out. So now we have to move on and just keep on trying to find some more veteran guys or some younger guys that maybe some teams got at a better position in the draft because they were just horrible, like Carolina was for so many years. So because they were so terrible, they were able to get a guy like Jaycee Horn. So if Minnesota can go out and poach a guy like that and make sure this secondary is hunkered down for years to come, I would definitely love to see that, because that has, like it said in the article, that has been a point of emphasis and something that the Vikings have needed to fix for years.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Griffen, I don't know how much more I can watch the Vikings try and draft a cornerback in the first round. We've seen it not work. And by not work, that is an understatement. That has not worked whatsoever. And I think that it's time that the Vikings could just go and get a corner via trade that they know will be elite talent, that he already is an elite talent. And not to mention with Brian Flores, will only make him more of an elite talent. And as you mentioned with the free agents as well, this could be a very concerning point for the Vikings offseason with pretty much every corner they have going to free agency. They do not have that. And I don't want to risk putting our first round pick, if we do end up keeping it, or a pick in the draft at corner and relying on them to stand this entire force coming towards the secondary for the Vikings defense. So with the free agents, the Panthers might not be willing to part ways with them, but they are remaining far from contention, in need of draft capital. The results the far aggressive end of what the Vikings, what need the Vikings could do at the deadline spectrum, but it would be an understandable move for the general manager who's covets youth, and the Panthers are horrible. Let's not sugarcoat. The Panthers are really bad, and a first-round pick has to at least be somewhat entertaining to them. And the fact that the free agents and everything, it really does seem like this makes sense for both sides of the party. And I do hope the Vikings at least entertain this. I hope we ask questions. I hope we get somewhat involved, whether it is or is not a first-round pick plus more. I do think that I'd be willing to do it, just because we know how good Jaycee Horn is. We know how good he can be, and we know how good he is in a horrible system. So it really kind of piques my interest to see that his name is out there of being in the trade market, and especially at the Vikings, seeing what's going on in the secondary right here. We need that elite guy along with Harrison Smith, someone who can play deep, someone who can cover the end zones. That's really just the point of contention that really makes me question what's next for the Vikings on that side. So, Griffen, ultimately, what I'm going to ask you before we finish this, do you think the Vikings get Jaycee Horn? Yes or no?
I think so. I think this is something where Minnesota knows that, hey, we got our quarterback for the future in J.J. McCarthy. So last draft, that was the more important one. Now we just have to worry about, okay, now we have to go ahead and get a guy who has been in the league a little bit, but isn't a veteran, but isn't super young as well. So not trusting in someone that you draft. Like you said, you don't want to take another gamble on another young DB and expect them to be NFL ready right off the bat. And with the free agents we have coming up in our secondary as well, it does make it a good opportunity for us to go out and get a guy like Jaycee Horn, because if we can go out to get a guy like him, I'm okay with letting someone like Shaq Griffen or Stephon Gilmore walk, just because we're going to have someone more insured for the future. Stephon Gilmore is past his prime. And again, I don't know how well Shaq Griffin's going to keep performing. He hasn't had a big splash with Minnesota since early on in the season. So if they're able to move on from one or both of them and get Jaycee Horn and potentially another DB for the future, I definitely like that move.
Yeah, I agree. And the trade deadline's close. They're very, very close. So we need to see the Vikings make a big splash. And if this does happen, this is going to be a very exciting time to be a Vikings fan and make this team even better than what the defense already was. But we got a big week. We have a few injury updates that we're going to have to cover. So Will Reichard being one of them, and a big game against the Jacksonville Jaguars that we should pull out another win. And hopefully we see a big turnaround once again from the Minnesota Vikings on this one. So Griffen, you got anything before we finish this one off here?
Can't wait to play against Jacksonville. I think this is a game where Minnesota's defense can just feast on a weak offense from Jacksonville. I know they gave Philly a bit of a run for their money, but I'm hoping that this week Brian Flores can just feast on them, make Trevor Lawrence uncomfortable, make sure that their playmakers can't do anything. And again, against that Jaguars defense, I think Sam Darnold will be able to pick them apart pretty good.
Yeah, hopefully this is a week where we really, really show our talents, what we got, what the Vikings are made of against the struggling Jacksonville Jaguars team. But we're going to have a bunch of updates for you guys throughout the week. Of course, the injury updates, Will Reichard, bit of concerning one after missing a few kicks in this game. We knew something was not right when we seen that first kick miss, but that's going to be a big point of what we have to watch this week, plus more. So you're not going to miss it. Hit the sub button, join us here. We're covering everything Vikings. But that's all we got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. But we're signing out. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.